Yo, welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I figured I'd go ahead and cover my game from the Russian Superfinal 2020. I'm not sure exactly what the requirements are as far as like like COVID and stuff like that, but I've noticed in some of the pictures I'm looking at that some of the players aren't wearing a mask. They're separated by a partition, but not everybody is. Got my guys out here collecting trash. Anyway, so they're I see some of them wear a mask. I see some of them not. They're able to shake hands. So I think it's kind of like, I guess, kind of halfway to where it used to be before. So yeah, I mean, just like everybody out there, I can't wait until everything kind of gets back to somewhat normal. I think it's tough for a lot of chess players, to play online because it's like grabbing the pieces. Like grabbing the pieces and sitting across a board from somebody is like, really kind of where it's at least for me. That's one of my most exciting things about playing a chess tournament is being able to sit across from the person, feed off of the person and, just kind of have that interaction. So, like I said, this picture here is what it looks like at the Russian Superfinal. Let me see. Get this clear. Okay, we clear? Okay, good. Yeah, so if you guys are ready, let's go and take a look. Like I always say at the end of the video, I have a tactical puzzle, the answer from the last video, and then I have a new one for you. So for those of you out there that really, really love chess, tactical puzzles and combinations, I got what you need. But yeah, let's go and take a look at this game, see what we have here. Get my stuff lined up. Cool. All right, so we have E4. We got E5, knight to F3, knight to C6. Bishop b5. So this is the Ruy Lopez. So it's one of the oldest openings known to chess. It has traces all the way back to the late 1400s. It is named after Ruy Lopez de Segura. He was a Spanish priest in the 1500s. And so it's pretty old one. So we have knight to f6. So we have the Berlin, the dreaded Berlin. Vladimir Kramnik played it against he played it against Garry Kasparov in their 2000 World Championship match, which I've covered. All right, so we have castles. We have knight takes e4, and we have d4. It's not really. It might look like it gives a pawn away, but it really doesn't. Black is almost forced to play knight to d6 because if we have in this particular position, once we have d4. If we have e takes d4, you're going to see rook to e1. And then you can either protect with d5 or f5, but let's just say we protect with d5. Knight's going to take on d4, and then you have f3 coming. And so, it's not going to be, too advantageous for white. It's actually really, really good for black. It's really, really good for white. So, like I said, we do have knight to d6. So almost always we have bishop takes c6, d takes c6, and we have pawn takes e5. So we have knight to f5, queen to d8. And these are like the most general lines that you play. So like so far, we've been playing like the absolute top moves. The crazy thing about it is this particular type of a game, the Berlin defense, these lines we've gone down, it's about a 53% draw rate for these games following these exact lines. So, every now and then somebody will play it just so they can get a draw. If they're playing in the tournament or something, all they need is a draw. They might go down these lines just to go ahead and secure a draw real quick. So it is very drawish. If there are wins for a side, it's going to be the white side. The black side only wins about 17% of the time. So it's not usually something that black is going to play so that they can get a win. But every now and then you can see a win squeaked out by black. So we have king takes d8, only move. So we have rook to d1. So king would come back over to e8. So we have knight to c3, knight to e7. We have a4. And a4, no, not yet. Okay, bam, knight to g6. So we've seen a4 played before. And to follow up with that, black would play a5. So knight to g6 is a brand new game. So this is a line that we haven't seen yet. So like I said, I mean, we were pretty much going down all the main lines a minute ago, and now we kind of started to vary a little bit. So we are in a brand new position here. And so we see a5 from white, and so we see a6 from black. And now, to show you guys like an interesting side variation after a5, because a lot of you guys might have noticed that, there's not really a lot protecting this knight. and it's very easy to pin this knight to this rook. And so if we were to see a bishop to g4, white would actually have quite a bit of problems in this situation. So a6 wasn't really necessary when it was played. Bishop to g4 would have given black, you know, at least pretty good equality, maybe a slight advantage. So just kind of running down a few moves real quick. So we have a6, b6, rook to a4, bishop takes f3, pawn takes f3, rook to d8. Rook would take d8 with check, king would take d8, and then we'd see rook to d4. And as you can see, you know, white actually, you know, has quite a bit, you know, the material is equal, but white has quite a few problems with their structure. You know, they have these double pawns here, the isolated pawn here. And so it's not looking super pretty for white. So even though it's a pretty equal game, you're in a situation where, like, you know, where white is going to have a lot, they're going to have to show a lot of technique, and they're going to have to, as a human being, you know, they're going to have to play, you know, very, very accurately. So, you know, let me see. So we got, like I said, we had a6 that came. And so now we have h3, recognizing that bishop g4 is a real problem. So we have bishop to e7, so bishop to e3. We got h5, so rook to e1, h4. Trying to see if we can't put a little clamp down, maybe for an endgame on this, you know, on this thing, kind of called like a pawn freeze. I'll put the video as a card up here for those of you that aren't familiar with that type of concept. So that way that move will make a little sense. So we have bishop to g5, so rook to h5, you know, of course, with a clear intent of just trying to remove that bishop away from the board. And so we tack on e7 with the bishop. King takes e7, so rook to a4. Nice little rook lift over here. And as you can see, white has kind of done the same thing, you know, trying to freeze black's pawns and stuff like that. So we see b5, rook to d4, so bishop to e6, and we have b4. And as you can see, white is putting all their pawns, trying to put their pawns on dark squares. You know, maybe at some point put this pawn on a dark square, because, you know, black does have a light squared bishop. So, you know, it just helps protect the pawns a little bit easier. So we have king to f8, and we have rook d to d1. So just backing the rook up to the first thing. Another interesting variation would have been after king to f8. We could see, do this right. We could see rook to e3. And as you can see, you know, black is kind of in a zugzwang a little bit, you know, because it's like, you know, they're getting this pawn double attacked, so they're double defending it. It's double attacked. You know, black doesn't really have a lot of good moves in this position. So this was just a way to kind of put, you know, black in more or less of a zugzwang, because there's not really a way you can move this knight. I mean, this bishop is kind of stuck. This rook is kind of, you know, so it was definitely a little bit of a stronger variation. So going through like maybe kind of a little couple moves. So we'd see rook to e8. Knight would come to e4. So knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5. We'd see knight to c5. Rook would take e3, almost forced. F takes a3. Bishop back to c8, you know, protecting this pawn here. And then rook would take h4. And then, I mean, it wouldn't be advisable to take here because this rook would come up here, and then you'd be able to win this bishop. And so, you know, you see that white is kind of playing on these light, you know, these weakened dark squares and stuff like that. So back, like I said, we have rook d to d1. And so we have rook to e8. So knight comes to d4. So we have c5. Knight takes e6. Rook takes e6. Rook back to d8 with check. So we have rook to e8. So rook takes e8. King takes e8. Knight to d5. We have king to d7. Also possible is king to d8. And so we see f4. And if you guys want to go ahead and stop the video here, there's a very simple tactical concept that is in the position right now, and I'm curious like how many of you guys would actually be able to find it. And so like I said, if you want to pause the video real quick and see if you can see what Karjakin actually played to take advantage of this nice little tactical shot, go ahead and see right now. All right, cool. And so basically what you're looking at in the situation here is the fact that you've pushed f4, and the only piece that's defending it is the d5 knight. And so it's a very simple tactical concept called removing the defender. And so c6 was the move that was played, because as you guys can see, you know, the only piece that's really holding the pawn together is going to be the d5 knight. So c6 is just a perfect move to, you know, knock it away. So even after knight to b6 with check, king to e7, you know, you couldn't play something like rook to f1 because rook to f5 would come, and there's not a way to defend this pawn. So you kind of pushed your pawn and put it in a position where, you know, it's not really able to be defended. And so we have knight to c8 with check. So we have king to e6, knight to d6. So we have knight takes f4. Like I said, I mean, there wasn't really a way for you to defend that pawn. And so we see knight to e4, pawn takes b4, knight to c5 with check. So king down to d5. And so we see knight takes a6. We have c5. And so we have rook to d1, king to c4, knight to c7, knight to e6, knight to d5. Not wanting to trade on trade there because it's not going to be a good trade for you. And so we see knight to d4. So knight to b6, king to c3. We see a6, king takes c2. So we see a7 giving away the rook, but of course, you know, you're going to get a queen if you can pawn, or if you can queen. And so we see rook to h8, rook to f1. So we see b3, and we see rook to f2, king to d3, knight to d7, and we see rook to a8. And as crazy as it sounds, rook to a8 is actually a blunder. I mean, it's actually in this position that Vitiugov actually resigns the game. But like I said, you know, the position is so won for black that it doesn't even matter if black blunders in the situation. So going back to this situation here, the by far most accurate move was knight to e2 with check, forcing the king to either move or the rook to give it away. And the problem with this position here for white is the fact that now this knight is disconnecting this rook from defending this pawn. And so this pawn is queening no matter what. And so the computer actually gives rook takes e2 as the best possible move in the situation. And after king takes, like I said, there's just no possible way to prevent this pawn from queening. And so when you have the move rook to a8, it takes black's advantage from about +8 to about +5, which generally, if you put yourself in a position where, you know, you are down, you know, you've worsened your position by 0.3 or by 3 points, which is basically 3 pawns worth. Normally it would mean that you lose the game. But like I said, black's advantage is so severe here that it doesn't even matter that this move is considered a blunder. It still doesn't matter. It's still completely just, you know, out of this world one for black. So like I said, knight to e2 is going to come, and, you know, there's just no way to stop this pawn. So that's white's main problem. So for those of you, like I said, that want those tactical puzzles here, I have this one for you. This was the one that I gave last time. You know, something that you should be noticing is that, you know, there's checkmate here on g2. And so, you know that the situation, you have to place a check. If you're facing checkmate yourself, you have to place a check. So queen takes c7 with check. And so the rook would take on c7. The rook would take on c7 with check. King would go to b8, only move. And then you would discover an attack on the king with rook to c1 with check with the bishop. And then the king would come over to a7. She'd rook to a1, bishop to a6. Rook a takes a6 with check. And so king to b7. Rook e to b6. So king to c8. Rook to a8. King to d7. Rook would take d8 with check. The king would take. And then you'd see rook to d6. And it was actually in this part here, because when I was looking at it, I did it correctly up to this point, but I went ahead and saw this move. So I had done right for about 3 moves, but in my calculation, I had kind of messed up in here. So, you know, if you got any of it, you know, just be confident, you know, that you got something right. But to show you guys this next puzzle, this is the one here, and it is actually a pinning. So it's basically, the concept is a pin. Yeah, like I said, that is the game from round 3 between Nikita Vitiugov and Sergey Karjakin. It was a pretty interesting one. And so I will see you guys next time. I appreciate you guys stopping by, subscribe and like. Keep watching my stuff. I appreciate it, guys. Suggest me some games if you want me to analyze some games for you. And I will see what I can do. I appreciate it. See you guys.